going to do one icebreaker question just to like test that everything's working.
Oh.
Your mic is kind of cutting in and out, so I'm just going
Mhm.
to see if we stop talking, whether that means like you'll come through. But icebreaker question is simple. What's your favorite food outlet on campus?
Hmm. Hmm. It really depends what kind of mood I'm in. Obviously, okay, I have to say courtyard because it's an any time of day kind of event, any kind of friend kind of event. It's the most versatile thing I can think of. I can think of myself there in absolutely any situation, pre-exam, post-exam, pre-lecture, post-lecture, during lecture. Probably shouldn't say that, but all of the above.
Cool. All right. Yeah, sounds great. So we can get started. Maddie, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we just have like a couple of basic questions to start with just for the recording. So can you please just tell us your name, the year of your degree, and then your campaign colour and slogan?
I'm Belinda Thomas. I'm a second year arts law student majoring in music. My campaign colour is red and my slogan is Bring on Belinda.
Great. And then who is your campaign manager?
Campaign manager is Belinda Thomas.
Good stuff.
Cool. Are you currently a member of a political party?
I used to be a member of the Greens and I am now a member of the ALP as of late last year.
Okay. And what about a faction? Have you joined a student faction, or could you maybe just go through your history with student politics?
Late last year I also joined Student Unity at USU. Yeah.
All right.
Cool, easy. So why are you running for USU board?
I've got a couple reasons. First of all, the most kind of generic one is I've just seen how positive and beautiful and rewarding that interactions and experiences with the USU can be. When I started out at this university, I really didn't get involved in much at all straight off the bat. And I wasn't really in a good place. My mental health was suffering. I really wasn't having much of a fun time at all. And then a couple of months in, when I did get involved, everything pretty much immediately just changed. On the bus to arts camp, I met one of my best friends who is still to this day one of my really great friends. And it's just this kind of experience that the world is your oyster and all those opportunities are there if you want them with the USU. Like that friend who I met on the bus to arts camp, she had a passion and she since helped to start a club and society of her own that she's really passionate about. And as like a young woman who wants to make things happen, that's just a really great opportunity for anyone involved. Secondly, I know how this is going to sound, but last year with the wonderful help of the SRC, I was able to attend NatCon, which is the National Conference of the National Union of Students. And the whole time I had basically absolutely no idea what was going on. But just being in that room, being kind of in the room where it happens with a student-led organization who, as a blanket statement, does a lot of really good work. So yeah, seeing that huge student-led organization doing good in that room filled with passion and creativity and innovation, and where change was happening and where student leadership was actually just very powerful. That was a huge kind of moment of anagnoresis, and that really opened my eyes up to something that I wanted to do. And finally, one little point that's a lot more personal is I remember last year seeing the USU elections, and especially it was Ellie and Irene. I saw these young women, these second year women who were running, and I remember distinctly thinking, oh, I could never do that in a year's time. Like I thought to myself, I could never do that. And so it's really personally quite empowering to me that I am able to do that now.
Cool. And what makes you better placed than the other candidates that are running to be on the board?
Good question. I think I'm coming from quite a unique position. I believe I'm the only, at least domestic woman of colour running currently. And in recent memory, there hasn't been a candidate from the con that I'm aware of at all. So as a con student, that is quite important to me. So it's basically those communities that I feel need to be brought more into the spotlight of the USU that I can represent.
Cool. Could you talk a little bit maybe also about any kind of leadership experience you've had, any kind of relevant experience with the USU that puts you maybe in a better place than the other candidates?
With clubs and societies, I am currently the secretary of SAS, the Art Society, and I'm also on the CSA, which is the Conservatorian Students Association at the con.
Okay, cool. Little bit of a different type of question. Which candidates out of the 10 that are currently running are your top 2 favorites, and which candidate is your least favorite?
Okay, actually, yeah. Favorite is favorite is a hard word to put on it.
Yeah.
I really don't want to pick favorites. The candidates I'm most similar to. Am I allowed to take that frame? Obviously, Ruby Watts, I think I'm quite similar to. We're both coming from that perspective of being kind of vibrant young women. I think we're kind of putting out a similar sort of vibe with the vision we would like to have for the USU. Oh, and I probably have to say Nick Rigby, coming from that SAS background.
Okay. Do you have any of the candidates that you maybe least favorite's not the best way to phrase it, but maybe that you don't quite align with their policies, or you think you disagree with them significantly about things? Or
obviously we haven't had a lot of like interaction with each other's policies. I do have to say, like, politically, of course, I don't agree with a lot of Liberal candidates from that background.
Okay.
I'll put it that way.
Right. So it would be Ben Hines then, the Liberal candidate? Okay, cool. One other question. If you had to cut $1 million from the USU's budget, where would you cut it from?
The thing with finances at the moment is I'm pretty sure all candidates are in the same boat. We don't have, we're not privy to the same information that board directors are. All the financial documents that we have access to are quite vague, so it's pretty difficult to say specifically where I'd like to cut money from. I can say specifically, I really don't want to cut money from CNS and most student programs, but I think it really is time to reassess which organization Incubate really serves.
Okay, interesting. Maddie, do you have anything to follow up with?
No, I think we're good on that question.
Okay, cool.
I guess, like, somewhat relevant to the issue of funds, do you agree with the board's decision to close Manning? And how would you have voted on the decision if it had happened in your potential term?
My personal opinion is I really do want Manning to be utilised to the greatest extent possible for as many students as possible that is financially reasonable. So I have had it explained to me, and I do agree with the USU's current decision.
So your petition then to keep Manning open, is that no longer in the works?
That is no longer in the works. It was a moment of passion that I was really invested in at the time, but I've since had different perspectives explained to me, and I have reevaluated personally.
Interesting. Okay. So obviously after these elections, there's the second election of the executive of the USU board coming up. Who would get your vote in the USU presidential election, and why?
I can't exactly give an answer to that right now, as I'd probably just have to pick the best candidate in my opinion at the time. There's obviously no like formal proposition of candidates right now, and it really just is what
yeah. We've heard that Benny and Nick are running, so I guess, like, out of the two of those, do you have a preferred candidate?
Excellent question. I obviously have campaigned for Nick in the past, but it really is, I don't have any idea of what they would like to specifically put forward, the kind of presidential candidate they'd like to present themselves as. So I don't know if I can give like a specific answer to that right now.
Okay, just sticking with kind of the current board as well. What is your opinion on how successful the current board has been?
Mm.
And perhaps after that, a bit more specifically on Connor Werett's presidency. What do you think he's done well, or what do you think he could improve on?
I was having a look at what the board really achieved in 2019, and it was a little bit difficult, my investigation per se. And yeah, I do think they could have done a little better. There were obviously some great motions they've passed. I think they have stuck largely with the vision of the USU in promoting growth, accessibility, all that sort of nice stuff. But I don't think there were any huge, major, significant motions, and I think that could be something improved on. As with Connor, the fact that he really knows so much about the USU itself, I think, is incredible. His eloquence really intimidates me. I think he's had a good presidency. Obviously, it hasn't been perfect, but I do think he has done good things for the USU.
Okay. Given that the USU is currently in a somewhat precarious financial situation, would you support or stand against a university takeover of the union? And why or why not?
Oh, I don't think the university should take over the union at all. Yeah, I think they need to be kept as two very separate, well, not very separate organizations, but I think the USU should have its autonomy. I don't think we should be submitting to the requests of the university, especially a university administration that has failed so many students over and over again. I do think we can stand our own ground, and I think that needs to be done.
Okay.
Cool. So just kind of moving into policy now, what would you say your overall policy priority is?
My overall policy priority, I know it's a broad term, but definitely 100% student life. That's how it has to be. That's the bread and butter of the USU, and it needs to be preserved at all costs.
Okay, great. Do you have any kind of like specific ideas for how, obviously like student life is like a bit of a mainstay in terms of people running for board. It comes up in pretty much everyone's policy every year. But you're in quite a unique position where if you're elected, you could be serving your term really during a lockdown where we don't know when it's going to end. So do you have any specific ideas on how you're going to carry that out?
I don't think that the sort of rescue effort is in force anymore. I think it is really more of that recovery effort right now. And within that recovery effort has been like incredible creativity and innovation from clubs and societies. And I really think that needs to be encouraged when we get back to business as normal, which doesn't have to be too far away. Yeah, we're really not in that stage of like coping anymore. We really are in that stage of recovery.
Okay, cool. And just kind of like circling back to that question in terms of like presidential candidates. So obviously last year you campaigned for Nick Forbett. What about him made you campaign for him like last year, and what's stopping you from decisively supporting him in a presidential bid this year?
I campaigned for him last year because we became friends on arts camp, and obviously I didn't know a whole lot about all this stuff at the time, but I thought, yeah, he's a nice guy, I'll help him out. But right now, obviously, I'm in a different position as myself as a candidate. So I really would need to assess what both of those candidates are willing to bring to the table.
Okay. Usually board candidates who are factionally aligned, like yourself, get help from factionally aligned board directors as well. So are you receiving any help from President Connor Werett?
No, not specific. Like obviously as friends, he's encouraging me, but that's it.
Okay. And as a con student, how do you feel about the way maybe previous candidates have included the con in their policy statements? Because that is a big part of your overall policy statement. And also there's a couple of current students that have also included, current candidates have also included bits about the con, but we might just talk about that later. I'll just let you answer the first question.
I don't know what the other candidates have said about the con so far, but I'm very passionate about the con. I've been attending classes there since I was 5. I had to fact check that with my mum, actually. But yeah, in the past, those policies are always like, oh, we want to get the con a cafe, that sort of thing. But what all the candidates with those really, really tokenistic policies tend to forget is at the con, we're our own campus. We have our own existing culture already. We have, as musicians, composers, creators, we have our own, not sort of lifestyle, but we have our priorities in check. And it is a bit intrusive when that existing campus culture is permeated. Like we have, instead of another food outlet, we already have a cafe that we love, that we go to. The guy working there knows our coffee orders, knows our names. We don't want that to be overhauled. So it's kind of, we know what we want. The CSA has done a fantastic job in helping out our students, and we really know what our students want. It's just when we are perceived as this little bargaining chip, it's not very fun to be perceived that way. So I'd really like to turn that around, and that bargaining chip attitude is really why the con isn't a huge fan of all of this, and just kind of exaggerates that distance we already have from main campus.
Okay, so getting a little bit more specific then about the con, Ben Hines, who's a candidate that we've talked about a little bit before, says in his policy statement that he backs the engagement for the con and the colleges, so he's kind of bundled them together. He says he'll provide campus charter buses from USU to the con, and he'll source arts-based industry experience and projects, I guess, for the con and the colleges as well. What are the specific things that you want to implement that you think maybe goes above and beyond that, or are different from, for example, what Hines has proposed?
First of all, with the bus, I think a con Camperdown or con Darlington bus is an excellent idea, but it's probably not something that the USU itself can provide. It's something that the university itself will have to provide. And yeah, we just can't do that as the USU. We'd have to lobby the university for that. And there are so many specifics that will go into that service to make it fine-tuned to the courses between Darlington and the con, when those courses are happening. And I know when those courses are happening. I'm enrolled in those courses. And so what was the second?
So what are the specifics then? Because you talked a lot about, wanting to engage the con. We have Hines here who's got, sourcing industry projects. What specific kind of material policies are you going to bring to the table to, bring the con to life in terms of engagement with the USU?
Interesting. Yeah, we really do need those exciting performance opportunities for music students. I know you always see those like casual performances at Courtyard and Herman's throughout the day, that sort of thing. But that really does need to be a more formalized process. There needs to be a user-friendly booking system that is really highly promoted and connected with especially the CSA to make that happen on both the con as a campus and across those USU venues on main campus. Also, Con Review is something that is not funded by the USU at all. It was a huge surprise when I was talking to my CSA team that some of the other reviews were funded by the university. They were absolutely shocked about that, which is not very fun. And kind of back to those performance opportunities, because obviously there's a number of kind of sections of degrees at the con. You've got the classical course, the contemporary course, and the jazz course. The classical course is, of course, much more implemented at the conservatorium itself, but especially the jazz and contemporary courses, especially the contemporary course who takes classes a lot of the time on the Darlington campus. We would be so keen to come over, have our performances heard by a wider range of students at main campus. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Just on the note of, I guess, Ben Hines, obviously earlier we discussed him being potentially the candidate who you would have the least in common with. Whereas Nick Rigby is someone you've identified as someone that you would have a lot of stuff in common with. I'm just kind of interested in how you're differentiating them, given that they're both members of the Young Liberals. Obviously Rigby is in the moderate Liberals and Ben Hines is in a different faction. What is it about them that kind of differentiates them from Liberal and not as Liberal?
They're both really nice people, so I don't want to be mean in any regard. I think it's just the time that I've had working alongside Nick Rigby. And like kind of aside from that whole political thing, it's just that we worked on SAS together and we've made things happen for our members.
Right. Okay. So you'd say it's more of like a bond of friendship rather than politics in this election.
Yeah. It's that sense of teamwork and camaraderie, that we've had together already.
All right, cool. Interesting. So this next question's coming from kind of like a different direction. We noticed in your policy statement, obviously you've directly addressed kind of the issue of COVID and how that's affecting the USU's operations. The way that the USU has kind of like handled the situation has attracted like, you know, a little bit of criticism from some of the things that they've done. So I guess on that note, do you think that staff at the USU needed to be fired and stood down recently as a result of decrease in money coming in, or do you think that that could have been handled a little differently?
I'm not exactly sure if this happened before all those government like JobKeeper plans were rolled out.
Right. I think I'm not too sure on the timing myself. I believe that it happened a little bit beforehand, but you know, with JobKeeper, that's kind of something that was like up in the air for a few weeks.
Very true.
There were discussions about it.
I'm pretty sure most of the USU's employees were not fully fired. They were just kind of put into standby for the time being. So all that JobKeeper should still be applicable as far as I'm concerned. And it is, most of the USU's main sources of funding are not wiped out, but have been substantially reduced. And some of them like literally have been wiped out. So it's kind of, as a bit of a you got to do what you got to do attitude, there isn't much of a way around it without making cuts that absolutely should not be made.
Yeah. Do you think though that like given that, you know, the USU is in, I guess, some senses like a student union, that maybe they could have taken a different approach to kind of this crisis though? Or do you think that this is the kind of thing that just you have to do is what you have to do, as you said?
60% of the USU's employees are students, So that's a really important thing to take into consideration there. But in terms of a way around it, it's the whole situation's pretty grim. I'm not sure if there was any like spectacular option that could have been taken otherwise.
Okay. And I guess on that note, do you think that the CEO, heads of department and board directors should be taking a pay cut during the COVID-19 crisis? And if you're elected, is that something that you'll look at?
Oh, yeah, that's an excellent idea. I definitely look into it.
Okay, cool.
Just a little bit more on COVID. Do you think that the USU should be taking a stance on how the university should be supporting students during this time? So should they come out with a statement or something like that? And maybe what do you think that stance should be?
Well, I have seen the SRC doing some absolutely wonderful work. So I'd just like to make a comment on that. I do think there are quite distinct lines between the role of the USU and the role of university administration. But because this is a situation where the world is upside down, I really would like to see a statement that the USU could make supporting its members as university students, rather than kind of attacking what the university has to do with it.
Okay, cool. Maddie, anything else to add?
I guess on that kind of specific point, in terms of like attacking what the university's been doing, do you think though that there should be some room for the USU to criticize, especially with the way that the university has kind of like handled its staff? Like, do you not think that there's like a position for the USU to take there? And as well, there's been quite a lot of criticism of some of the measures that that the university's taken, like Proctor U. There's been a lot of discourse over kind of like the pass-fail system and that kind of stuff. Do you think that there's room for the USU to be criticizing those kinds of actions?
Criticism, yes, I do agree with that. Whereas I do believe the SRC does have a much greater role in that sort of position. I would, in the position of a board director, I would be laying out a little bit of criticism on that note.
Okay, interesting. And I guess this is somewhat pertinent to this because it's obviously happening in her first few months of being CEO, but what do you think of Alexis Reuteman's leadership as a CEO thus far?
I don't have any complaints to lay down. My interaction with her has been like a little tiny bit in that candidate ethics training session, and from that, her background, what she's had to say about that has been very good. I'm very proud that this organization is run by a female CEO after a long stint with that male CEO. But yeah, I think she's done a good job in the short time that she's been here.
Okay, interesting. Chuyi, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so just kind of building on that, I noticed in your statement as well, you talk a little bit about kind of listening to more nuanced stories and taking in different experiences from minority identity groups or underrepresented voices. How the USU, what do you think you're going to utilize those particular voices and stories within? How do you plan to kind of build a program that implements those voices, and what form will that take in the USU?
The USU already has a lot of excellent programs like that already exist, actually, but they're just completely not promoted at all. And even looking them up, I had no idea about them. It really is that whole thing based around connection, and especially after this whole period of desolation, it's connecting those stories with people who want to hear them. Which should be everyone, whether that's in a format of the creative arts, some kind of special week or forum, or promotion within clubs and societies. I mean, in my personal experience, I'm a young Chinese woman and my identity means a lot to me. So it's just, I don't want to have that story muted at all.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any final things you wanted to add, Maddie, or?
I don't think I had anything. Was there anything that you wanted to add, Belinda?
Excellent question. I just really wanted to drive in that whole thing about moving from the rescue plan to the recovery plan, and also in this new strategic plan year for the USU, there's a section in the 2017 to 2020 strategic plan that says we need to be adaptive to any changes in the physical and academic environment of the university. And I think that's more important now than ever. And there's also something in the Australian health sector emergency response to novel coronavirus that says we need to continue to engage and empower and build confidence in the community. So I just think that's a really important sentiment that should outline not only my campaign, but the vision of the USU in not just this year, but the next few coming years in this strategic plan.
Great, thank you. Was there anything else that we had to go over, Chuyi, or is that everything?
I think that's most things. Maybe just as fun bonus questions. Clearly, because this campaign is now completely online. Are you going to be taking any interesting approaches to online campaigning? We've been theorizing here at Honi about all the amazing TikToks we're going to see, but what do you have any plans specifically for tackling online as opposed to being in person?
TikTok. I spend like 5 hours a day on TikTok, which is a bit ridiculous. So that's probably going to be that path taken. As for other online strategies, I don't think there's anything hugely out of the blue, but there could be some interesting things in the works.
Okay, interesting.
Exciting.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much. And we will be in contact really soon about the quiz show or something that's happening that's in the works. So we'll figure that out. And yeah, thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Belinda.
Thank you.